What's up guys, welcome back to Deck Tech for Decks, and today we are doing a deck tech on Storvald. Now a little bit of backstory, I opened a community post asking you guys what commander would you like to see a deck tech on, and Storvald got the most love, so I went ahead and threw him in the polls, and he got smashed. I threw him in the budget polls, and he got smashed again. Feeling bad, I created one last poll to give him one last shot, and he barely made it, so here's the deck tech. Now, what do we want to do here? I included the deck full of a lot of small creatures that want to be buffed up for extreme value, like Cold-Eyed Selkie just dealing 7 damage to opponent and drawing 7 cards. That's the kind of energy we have in this deck. We're tapping mana dorks for 7 mana, we're buffing creatures up to 7 to give our whole board 7 power, and honestly, we're ending the game out with a go-wide strategy that can even create more tokens, because if we buff those creatures up to 7 and they deal combat damage, you get 7 tokens out of nowhere. So if that sounds like a deck tech you're into, let's get into it. Let's get into these creatures that want us to change their power. Shanna, Purifying Blade. Now she's out of nowhere a 7/7 that connects, and now we can pay any amount of mana up to 7 to draw cards. Cold-Eyed Selkie. Simple. She connects, she's a 7/7, boom, draw 7 cards. Marwyn the Nurturer, Cradle Clearcutter, Viridian Joiner, and Hornblade Elite. All 3 of these are gonna add mana equal to their power, so now we'll turn them into a 7/7 and tap them for 7 mana. Sounds pretty fun to me. Cultivator of Blades and Pathbreaker Ibex are gonna buff our creatures judging on their power or our greatest power, so it'll turn our massive board of little creatures into just a massive board of massive creatures. Master Biomancer is insane in this deck, just turn him into a 7/7, and now our creatures are entering in with 7 1/1 counters on them. Tanazir Quandrix can make it to where all of our creatures are now 7/7s. Tervagon and Kadira will make a massive board state, right? We're just shoving 7 creatures onto the battlefield. Notably with Tervagon, he's already going to have 1/1 counters on that, so on top of being a 7/7, he's going to have 1/1 counter, so we're probably creating closer to 10 to 11 creatures when this guy connects. Lastly, we have Champion of Liamholt. Not only are we able to put a ton of counters on this girl in this deck, but making her base power 7/7 is going to be insane and basically make our whole board unblockable. Let's talk about the core of the deck. We have Derevi. Now we're untapping all of our mana dorks to tap them for more mana. There's no infinite shenanigans in this deck, but Derevi is just super solid. Azuri Claw of Progress. Now again, it's a giant deck, but we're playing a bunch of small creatures, so this guy can act as a second commander almost. Buffing our utility creatures to the moon and getting some insane value. He even synergizes with our commander, since our commander does it off of base power and Azuri does +1/+1 counters. So if you have them both on the board, you can create some pretty massive creatures. Kennen Bonder Prodigy. We run like 14 different mana dorks in this deck, so being able to add an additional mana whenever we tap them is pretty useful, plus he's got that broken ability. Now that we have a massive board of creatures, we need to protect it. Heroic Intervention, Flawless Maneuver, and Akroma's Will give our creatures indestructible. Notably, we can also use Akroma's Will as a game ender. There are a lot more ways to go wide in this deck, like God Eternal Oketra. Now whenever we're casting those mana dorks, we're just getting a 4/4 on top of that. Tyrannid Hirudin and Zerium. These 2 are practically the same card, right? We're dealing damage, and then when we deal damage with a Tyrannid or Griffin, we get another one. And then they're gonna double each turn. You'll start off with 2, and then 4, and then 8. It gets out of hand really quickly. Finale of Glory. This card's insane. If we can cast it for X equaling 10, we're going to create a massive board state and honestly take over the game, which is not insane with how much mana dorks we run. We do have some solid recursion in the deck as well. Celestine the Living Saint, we can buff this chick up to 7, so she's going to get anything in our graveyard that's a creature. Eternal Witness, just solid. Sun Titan, again, solid, especially since all of our creatures are low to the ground. Ascend from Avernus is a super solid card, especially late game once we've lost all of our creatures. Now we can reanimate our whole graveyard and just shove it right back on the battlefield. Sakashima's Will. There's some pretty crazy things we can do with this card in the deck, but mostly I'm excited to copy Tyrannid Hirudin or Zerium to essentially just double our board. There is some other creatures too, right? We can copy some of our mana dorks to create a lot of mana or turn everything into a Beast Whisperer or Soul of the Harvest. So whenever we cast a creature spell, we're drawing like 10 cards. Lastly, we have Genesis Wave. I'm really excited to see what we get off this, especially since we can generate so much mana. Moving on, let's talk about the mana dorks. We have Noble Hierarch, Fendhorn Elves, Elfish Mystic, Leonmore Elves, Birds of Paradise, Incubation Druid. We have Savala, Heart of the Wilds. I'm really excited about this one because she's going to tap for just 7 mana at a minimum, right? Bloom Tender, super solid, tapping for 3 mana. Fairbrew Elder, another mana dork that's tapping for 3 mana. Then we do run Rona's Monument and Defiler of Vigor. I really like Defiler of Vigor here because we do run a lot of, 1-drops, and there's a lot of green pips in the deck in general. And now we're buffing our whole board every time we cast an elf, and we don't have to spend mana to do that. Rona's Monument is just going to go ahead and make the majority of our deck cheaper, while being able to buff up the creature that we're trying to get value off of, right? Whether that be Kuldai Selkie or we're tapping a creature for a lot of mana. Let's move on to the card advantage, and I bet you can already guess what route I went. We have Chulane, Teller of Tales. Not only is this guy super solid in the deck because we're going to get ramp and card advantage off of him, but he can blink our creatures back to our hand, that way we can draw additional cards. Beast Whisperer, Guardian Project, Soul of the Harvest, and Primordial Sage are all going to allow us to draw cards whenever we're casting our massive slew of mana dorks. The Great Henge, another solid card in the deck. Now, it is going up in price, but it is about to see a reprint, so something to be on the lookout for. Now, whenever we're casting those creature spells, we're drawing a card and shoving a 1/1 counter on them. Additionally, this does tap for mana. Then we have your on-damage effects, like Toski Bearer of Secrets, Orn Frostfang, Reconnaissance Mission, and Biden of Thassa. Now, whenever our massive board of creatures deals combat damage to an opponent, we're drawing cards off of that as well, and I did run Rishkar's Expertise, so we can draw 7 cards, dig deep, and cast a 5 CMC spell or less for free. Pretty solid. For our last category, let's go over removal. We have Aberrant and Reclamation Sage. Super solid creatures that are going to go ahead and get rid of any of those pesky artifacts or enchantments. Bane of Progress isn't messing around. This guy's going to enter the battlefield and destroy all artifacts and enchantments. This guy has been an all-star in my games lately, especially with everybody running those new artifact commanders. Generous Gift and Beast Within are super solid removal cards because they're going to get rid of any permanent. They're super flexible and I love them. Siren Storm Tamer because it's a creature and we're here to play mind games. Next up, Darksteel Mutation. This card is not fun to have on your commander, and so I like playing it. That way they can experience my pain. Swords to Plowshare is a staple, definitely shove it in there, and this is where it kind of gets funny, because when people see our commander, they're not going to expect these kind of board wipes in our deck. We are running Fell the Mighty, Elspeth, Sun's Champion, and Dusk and Dawn. These will hit our commander, but the rest of our board is going to be relatively untouched, which is a very small price to pay. Additionally, it's going to catch our opponents off guard. Dawn even acts as a pretty solid form of recursion, bringing all of our mana dorks back to the battlefield. And that's going to do it for the deck tech, guys. Let me know what you think. I had fun building this one. I'm glad I could deliver it to you guys. I'm sorry it's a little late, but hey, we got there. As always, I really want to know what your guys' thoughts are on this deck in the comments below, and I hope this helped you in your deck building endeavors. I'll see you in the next one.